G'day guys, Shawnee from Life and Tennis. In today's video, I'll be discussing the Laver Cup, which finished up on Monday, as well as the comeback from Marin Cilic, winning his first title in almost 3 years. So yeah, Team Europe has staged an incredible comeback in the Laver Cup after Team World got out to a seemingly unassailable 8-4 lead, and yeah, basically everyone thought they had it in the bag. Tournament debutant and four-time Grand Slam champion Carlos Alcaraz basically won it off his own back, winning 8 points out of a possible 13 points, which hasn't been done before at the Laver Cup. Throughout the tournament, he was simply unplayable in singles and in doubles, and in fact, he was the only player that managed to get a doubles win for Team Europe, because Team World do tend to dominate in the doubles. They do tend to perform better in the doubles than they do in the singles. But this time round, he had to basically almost do it off his own back. He was one of the only players to have won all of his singles matches. So yeah, an incredible achievement. And yeah, the Spaniard just doesn't cease to amaze and impress at any tournament that he plays in, basically. Interestingly enough, actually, Alcaraz has criticised the tournament schedule on the ATP Tour, basically saying that the tournament tour is going to kill him, and you know, it's very tight for, you know, to squeeze in all of those events throughout the year, particularly, you know, the mandatory events, and I guess a lot of those 250 events, which some of the bigger name players don't always play. But yeah, and even Andy Roddick has you know, responded to that criticism by basically saying, you know, call the tournament organisers bluff, don't play the tournament, basically suggesting that, you know, they're not going to force you to play the tournaments if, you know, you take a stand, essentially. So yeah, I thought they were very interesting comments from Alcaraz. You know, we have heard how many tournaments they do squeeze into a year, and particularly this year with Alcaraz playing, you know, winning French Open and Wimbledon in succession, and then also making the gold medal match at the Olympics, and then he played the US Open. So that's so many tournaments back to back to back. It clearly took its toll by the time he got to the US Open, because, you know, he was clearly underdone against Van Zandt, who he would normally not lose to. But, you know, obviously that was a great match from, don't take anything away from Botic, but again, you know, I guess that speaks to the, you know, the tournament calendar, you know, how tight it is, how many tournaments they do try to squeeze in. Especially there are certain parts of the year where there are a lot of tournaments. You know, there's the clay court swing from sort of, I guess, April, June onwards. Then you've got the Grand Slams, and then there's a little bit of a break, and then you've got the US Open hard court swing, or the hard court swing leading into the US Open. I guess, yeah, a great example of, you know, just how tight the tournament calendar is. You know, last year Alcaraz didn't get to play, you know, Davis Cup, and then this year he actually hasn't played the Davis Cup yet, but he is listed in Spain's team to play the Netherlands in November, I believe. So yeah, it's one of those things where a lot of these players, especially the high-profile players that are, or, you know, players that maybe in the top 20 or 30 that are really competing, you know, working hard to compete at the Grand Slams, they're quite selective about their calendars and, you know, what tournaments they play and things like that. So yeah, I think the tournament scheduling and the amount of tournaments that, you know, you have in a calendar year, it's always been quite a divisive issue amongst players. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they actually do anything about it next year, because it seems that there's a lot more high profile players that are talking about this issue now. So yeah, I just found that really interesting, coming from, you know, the four-time Grand Slam champion, from, you know, one of the best players in the world currently, to speak out about these issues. You don't often hear it from, you know, such high profile players. You hear it from maybe the lower ranked players in the world. But yeah, I thought it was very interesting coming from Carlos. So yeah, very, very interested to hear what your feedback is on all of this too. I found it interesting that Team World did tend to favour the Americans, with Taylor Fritz, Ben Shelton and Francis Tiafoe playing 2 singles matches each, whereas the other players in the team, Cherundolo, Kokkinakis and Tabilo, only played 1 singles match each. Look, maybe it's not a surprise, given that John McEnroe is the team captain and he would favour his, you know, his countrymen. But at the same time, it would be nice to see, you know, other players from around the world to play. Team World has historically favoured Americans in the past, which I suppose is based on the ranking, so it does make sense And for John McEnroe, he would want to field the strongest possible team to give his Team World the best chance of winning, basically. Having said that, it would be nice to see players from other countries represented for the Team World team. As an example, there are two Chinese players, Jerry Shang and Zhizhen Zhang, who have been in really good form. Apologies if I'm not pronouncing those names properly, by the way. But both those two men, Shang and Zhang, have made finals recently. Jerry Shang won his, and Zhang lost to Cilic, which I'll talk about later. So yeah, it would be nice to see maybe a different mix than just Americans all the time. The other thing that I think would be really nice to see is listing some doubles specialists in your team, like for example the Aussies Matty Ebden and Max Purcell, or even the Italians Vavasori and Bolelli, just to mix it up from just having like purely singles players in your team that also happen to play doubles. I think that would be nice. So maybe we might see that in future Laver Cups, basically. One of the things I have noticed about the Laver Cup, and this happened from the very start, but particularly in the last few years, is that there's always a lot of emotion surrounding it amongst the players. So clearly they take it seriously. It's not just, not just like a novelty tournament for them. One particular incident that I noticed where there was a bit of fire actually was involved Daniil Medvedev, who in his match against Ben Shelton threw his racket on the ground, which bounced towards the crowd. Luckily, it didn't hit anyone, but afterwards, I think he ended up winning the first set in a tiebreak. And yeah, John McEnroe and Francis Tiafoe were basically asking for him to be disqualified, to which the chair umpire basically said, if it had hit someone, he would be disqualified, but otherwise it's a warning. So yeah, there was a bit of fire. There was a bit of feeling amongst the players. So which is I love seeing that. It just shows that they're passionate and they're really hungry to win the tournament. As I said, it's not a novelty tournament for them. So it is really, really good to see, and you want them to take it seriously. All in all, it was a really fun tournament to watch, and one of the closest contests that we've seen in recent times. Since Roger masterminded the idea back in 2017, the Laver Cup has basically taken off in the last few years. Its popularity has gone through the roof, essentially. In other news, 2014 US Open champion and one of my favourite players on the tour, Marin Cilic, has just won his first title in 3 years, his 21st title in total. The Croatian has had a lengthy layoff due to injury and has come back with a bang, beating China's Zhizhen Zhang in 2 tiebreaker sets. So it was a really, really closely fought contest at a 250 event in China. In the process, Cilic has become the lowest ranked champion in ATP history, winning the tournament from a ranking of 777 in the world, which is an absolutely astonishing achievement. Of course, Cilic is a Grand Slam champion and former world number 3, so maybe it's not that surprising, but it's still an amazing effort, especially considering how difficult it is to come back from injury and, play that well in the modern game. These days, you see a lot of players that suffer injuries and just don't quite get their form back, like, Dominic Thiem, Andy Murray, the list is, there's lots of players that were never able to recapture the form at their prime. So hopefully this title will kickstart his, a bit of a resurgence for Cilic, maybe for 2025. Cilic, to me, has always been one of the most underrated players of the last decade. He's just such a pure ball striker, and at his best, he could beat anyone on his day. Yeah, look, he's one of those players that, alongside players like David Nalbandian, Martin Del Potro, David Ferrer, even Kei Nishikori, is one of those players that would have won a lot more Grand Slams had it not been for the big 3. So yeah, I always love watching him play, particularly given how he's a very aggressive baseline player, and that's the sort of style that I like to play as well on the tennis court. So he's always a lot of fun to watch, and when he's giving his best, he's very, very hard to beat. So yeah, I wish him all the best for 2025. So yeah, anyway, I'm keen to hear your thoughts on the Laver Cup and whether or not you think it's a great tournament to watch, and yeah, your feedback on Marin Cilic's comeback, and maybe even some other players on the tour who have been grinding away in the background, working their way back onto the tour. So yeah, as always guys, like, subscribe for more tennis related content. Cheers guys.